As a child of the early 2000s, I would often go to my local video store and see the same few covers that caught my attention, like Santa's Sleigh, Team America, World Police, and who could forget all those comedies that were unrated. But the one that I remember seeing the most was this cover, with that eye and that title in that font, Godzilla. And I just never saw it. Ever. Unlike a lot of people in my generation, this Godzilla was not my first association with the character. Destroy All Monsters was. I was a Godzilla fan because of everything else. All I knew was that this movie was supposedly bad, and I just never bothered watching it. For years, my only association with it was that eye cover, until last year, when I finally cracked and watched it.
That's a lot of fish.
American Godzilla, a term that before the Monsterverse had only conjured up one image. This guy. Godzilla Attempt Number 1 was a 1998 romance comedy by slapstick duo Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich. Ah, Roland Emmerich, a name that has built the bedrock of this very channel, a director who is my personal guilty pleasure. I like disaster movies, and I like terrible, corny movies. I also love Godzilla, anything Godzilla, so I think I got a unique perspective once I finally, in my mid-20s, watched Godzilla in 1998. This is a film that could have only existed in the cultural zenith of 1998.
The network is on an internet.
The effects, the pretentious art decisions, pretending Matthew Broderick was hot, casting like 3 Simpsons actors for some reason, the aforementioned P. Diddy song, the shameless tie-ins, and most importantly, trusting Roland Emmerich with a $150 million budget. Like Zilla himself, this was a movie that rose up, made a mess of things, and ultimately was just not meant for this world. It had to be destroyed. So, it's the mid-90s. TriStar was looking for somebody to helm their Godzilla project after they majorly screwed it up. Like, they had a passionate team that wanted to do a faithful take on the Toho monster, but the studio, frankly, didn't trust unknown names, especially with that large of a budget. And so, after all this time and effort, the project died. TriStar still wanted to do a Godzilla film, though, just this time with big, popular names instead. And after Independence Day, there were no bigger names than Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich, who both at first said no, until TriStar begged again, and then they said yes, under one condition, that they get to make the movie however they wanted. You see, while Devlin was kind of a Godzilla fan, the pair viewed him more like a relic. They just saw him as a guy in a rubber suit. In their minds, there was no possible way this design would ever be taken seriously by American audiences. They thought he would be too dopey, in their words. They would have to innovate Godzilla. Like everything else in the 90s, they wanted to make this Godzilla slim, sleek, and, in a tale as old as time, Devlin and Emmerich were a pair that believed they were innovating, when in reality they were just missing the point. We know this design can very much work for American audiences. When conveyed with the proper scale and proper respect, Godzilla is utterly unmatched. But these two simply didn't have the vision or foresight to see that. They viewed Godzilla's positives as his negatives. He can't walk slowly. He can't shoot atomic breath. He can't fight another monster. Oh no, he has to be as far removed from the rubber suit as possible. I told Sony that I would do the film, but on my own terms, with Godzilla as a fast-moving animal out of nature, rather than some strange kind of creature. So what we got was a Godzilla in name only, as fans called it. I gotta say, that term rightfully applies. It'd be like if the Detective Pikachu movie had Pikachu, and he's just this giant yellow rat. If the big rat says Pikachu, then nobody can tell the difference. They're basically the same character. Imagine showing this to somebody who had no knowledge of the 1998 movie. Someone with no association with this as Godzilla. You think they would make the connection themselves? I'm not so sure. His spine was turned horizontal, his arms reached the ground. his head was that. What's funny is that Gojira combines the Japanese words for gorilla and whale, a gorilla whale. And you can see this pretty clearly in his original design. Even when he has more reptile features, he still has that base appearance. But in this, he's just a lizard. What about this thing makes you think of a gorilla or whale? His name doesn't even make sense.
It's Godzilla, you moron!
Godzilla 1998 is not trying to be a Godzilla movie. It is trying to be more than anything, Jurassic Park. Oh, you think you're so cool with your T-Rex, huh? Well, our guy is bigger and better. Zilla is just a big T-Rex that gets lost in New York. He chases after vehicles like one, and they even make a damn Barney joke. They made him so un-Godzilla-like, he doesn't even do a real atomic breath. He just shoots flames like a dragon. And they added a panther roar while he does it too. Probably the biggest piece of evidence that this just wanted to be Jurassic Park, though, is, the whole second part of the film.
Wrong floor.
Remember those raptors? Well, what if we had hundreds of them now? Thousands of raptors. Sorry, my mistake. They're baby Godzillas. Godzilla laid all of these eggs in Madison Square Garden. But you see, Godzilla was just born pregnant.
Say what?
All Godzillas are born pregnant. They can reproduce asexually, because nature finds a way. The dinos and that were all the same sex, but reproduced anyway. So, I guess this Godzilla creature is just born pregnant then. Because that happens, right? I don't think that's a lizard thing. Maybe mushrooms do that? Maybe the flood? Who's to say? We have to run from raptors now. The climax of the movie is just making sure these raptors don't escape. Each Godzilla would lay their own eggs. So many eggs that they would conquer the world. Which means we gotta kill them. Can't let a single child escape. So here's the twist. I don't hate this movie. A lot of people now actually really like it, and look back on it fondly. Is it because of childhood nostalgic brainwashing? Yes. Yes, it is. But that's not always a bad thing. There is something undeniably nostalgic about everything surrounding Godzilla. I'll talk about that later on. Yet what I think people like best about this movie isn't just the tie-ins or the cartoon. It isn't its characters, its writing, or even Zilla himself. It's the tone.
Audrey, look at this. He trashed the garden. Oh, man. Now I'm pissed.
Godzilla is charming. It's cheesy, it's corny, and it's full of intentional and unintentional comedic moments.
That's a lot of fish.
The atmosphere, despite being constantly dark and rainy, is not depressing. It's lighthearted. It is exactly what you would expect it to be. Not a Godzilla film, but a Roland Emmerich movie, dressed in a Godzilla suit.
I think your story just walked by the window.
What?
And as Roland Emmerich's most vocal fan, I love that. Even though I never saw this as a kid, I can understand why people like this movie. Because people like this movie in the exact same way that I like Independence Day.
Welcome to Earth.
Are they good movies necessarily? No. But there is an element to these films that have only grown with time. And also, films just kind of aren't like this anymore.
Always wanted to join the French Foreign Legion.
As a Godzilla movie, yeah, it's terrible, but it's mainly in that artificial way, because this thing isn't Godzilla, he's a T-Rex. But hey, I think as a kaiju horror type film, it's quite well executed. Now, if any of you are angrily typing in the comments because I said that, well, sorry to burst your bubble, but I didn't say that. Godzilla Minus One's director, Takashi Yamazaki, did. And to be honest, that's the healthiest approach to take for this movie. Embrace this movie as the time capsule that it is, with all its late 90s cheese. First, the characters really don't take the situation too seriously.
Back off, Gene.
Like 20 different characters, all split into multiple different groups. And all these different groups are usually by the climax, huddled together, watching TV. Roland Emmerich really loves his groups of people watching the TV. It's full of silly people doing silly things. I like that. I like the overly sappy music that doesn't really fit the scene at all.
If they get out, they'll multiply, and very soon a new species will emerge. One that could replace us as the dominant species of this planet.
Don't celebrate now, they haven't even blown up the babies yet. I could sit here and rage like Doug Walker over the Godzilla equivalent of a back credit card. And for those Godzilla fans, I could do that. And I might. I probably will. That's all in good fun though. This isn't a Last Airbender. Unlike Shyamalan, they at least added back a few elements of entertainment value in return. It is certainly the most uplifting film about a giant monster ransacking a city that I can remember. Like, instead of panicking that there's a giant lizard in Manhattan, everyone at the news station is just happy the camera guy got the first footage. How fitting is it that when Godzilla finally attacks New York, New Yorkers still don't care? Wait, why is he in New York? Godzilla has always been a creature of the Pacific, you know? Traditionally, he's somewhere around here. So let's track Zilla's journey in this movie, shall we? First, he attacks a Japanese boat somewhere near Tahiti. I'm guessing that's so we can get the obligatory Gojira reference. And then, Godzilla swims a few thousand miles to Panama, where he crosses the entire isthmus just to get into the Caribbean. From that, he swam from the Caribbean for another few thousand miles into the cold-ass waters of the North Atlantic, right on the US eastern seaboard. Yeah, if there's one place I can imagine a giant reptile would want to go, it's the mid-Atlantic. Zilla didn't want to go anywhere on the West Coast, or hell, even Florida. He wanted to go right for New York City, for an entirely natural reason.
That's what he's doing in New York. He's nesting.
Nesting?
Yeah, that makes sense. What better nest than Madison Square Garden? Humanity's pretty lucky Zilla picked one of the most populous places on Earth to use as a nest. All they had to do to save the world was blow up one building full of raptors. Imagine if he had picked some Polynesian island, or stayed in the jungles of Central America, off where nobody would notice until hundreds of dinos began running out of the forest. By then, it'd be too late. If this story didn't begin in a recognizable setting, I assume humanity would have to fight a tyrannid-like swarm of Godzillas popping out from Central America. These things really aren't that strong. You could probably take these guys out if you actually hit them. Imagine thousands of Zillas fighting against a row of military defenses. Zilla's getting taken down by cruise missiles or AC-130 rounds. A world war as humanity must unite against the Zilla threat. Wait, that's actually a good idea. I would watch that movie. Contact me, Emmerich. I got an idea for a sequel. But alas, we have New York as our setting. Funnily enough, during the most depressing New York weather imaginable. It rains so much, I'm shocked their main concern isn't flooding. This is a very wet film. Every scene in New York is during a downpour, or at night. Just constant rain. There is not a single scene with Zilla on a well-lit day. If you know anything about CGI, well, it's pretty evident why. Night environments help hide imperfections. It's easy to cover up bad CGI. So whenever we do see Zilla, he's in the dark, or underground, or in the water. Full shots are only at night. And during the day, when we do get brief glimpses, well, you can see why they only ever show him in the dark. I didn't know one of Zilla's powers was phasing through buildings. Zilla is not a big monster compared to the real thing. He doesn't tower over any buildings. He runs around them, or even through them. Weaving in and out of an urban maze. You know, the very Godzilla characteristic of running from the military. And when he's not running, he really isn't doing much. He seems pretty calm, if anything. And when he's calm, the damn military open fire. Look, I get it. They're protecting the city. But did they have to be so bad at it? How can you guys not hit this giant lizard? He's right there. Did they replace the army with Helldivers? The best America has to offer, unloading right into the buildings of New York City. Every missile they fire misses. Bullets hit, but they don't do anything. This is still a disaster movie, by the way, but only because the army destroys the city more than the giant monster. This lizard is a Bugs Bunny trickster bamboozling thousands of Elmer Fuds. Normally Godzilla has a bit of human personality that glimpses through, but Zilla really doesn't. He's like an animal that escaped from the zoo. He just wandered into New York City and got lost. He does so little damage on screen, you can't really root against him. His biggest issue is that he's just too big, like Clifford. Would the Army too have gunned Clifford the big red dog down in the street? Is that how the live-action movie ends? Just like Clifford in that movie I didn't watch, he is killed by the Army with a barrage of missiles, dying confused and scared among the cheers of millions of New Yorkers. Yes, play that heroic music. You just killed a mom and its offspring. The biggest inconvenience he is to the city is keeping people from getting back to their homes. He's like a pest the exterminators can't get rid of. The city almost feels bigger than the monster. Like, I'm pretty sure they intentionally made New York bigger than it actually is. Made it this labyrinth this animal was stuck in. A maze where hundreds of choppers can perfectly weave in and out without hitting the buildings. This movie, I swear. So by the time Godzilla actually dies, and everyone celebrates, it's kind of just baffling. More like people are happy the wildlife was gunned down. Are they psychotic? But hey, I think that's probably just because the tone is so light. I'm sure if a lizard this big actually did attack the city, the destruction wouldn't be so cartoonish. Like, even with this giant monster rampaging around, New York still feels somewhat invincible. And this is the part of the video where I, the video essay YouTuber, bring up 9/11. This is my turning red moment.
This film takes place less than a year after the September 11th terrorist attacks. I bring this up because it radically altered the culture of the time.
So, Lindsay Ellis once compared how different pre-9/11 Independence Day was compared to post-9/11 War of the Worlds. Like, the pre-9/11 movie had a completely different perspective on disasters than the post one. And I can't help but feel the exact same comparison can be made between Godzilla and Cloverfield. Okay, stick with me on this. Both are kaiju movies, involving a monster, wandering into New York, destroying landmarks, getting fought by the military, with entirely different tones. My point here is, you just couldn't make this scene with this joke after 2001. It's something only the height of 1990s America could have produced.
That's the goddamn Chrysler building we're talking about.
This long into the video, and I finally got to the characters.
Found the place. Come on with a
Dr. Nick Tatapa Papa.
Topopolis.
It's the Topolis.
Yeah, that. Matthew Broderick is Dr. Nick, the nuclear scientist. What a leading man he is. Dr. Nick is one of those standard, I'm too smart for my own good type characters.
Especially ones that look for gonadotropic hormones or clomiphene citrate.
Actually, dude, it's salt.
That's what I said. Sodium chloride.
Dude, that would be salt.
He's just awkward for most of the time. Gets dragged along throughout the whole plot. Yet somehow, the female characters just keep finding him attractive. This guy, in this hat, what a heartthrob. This is probably the least star-studded cast for a Hollywood blockbuster I can really think of. And that's not a bad thing, it's just interesting. It's mainly just TV actors. Like, who do we got here? Ferris Bueller, love interest whose biggest role was this movie, Sam Witwicky's dad, Modern Warfare guy, and 3 whole voice actors from The Simpsons. Okay. Audrey is Dr. Nick's ex-girlfriend. She's a reporter who wants to make Godzilla her big break story. She is just an overall terrible person. I hate her. So their backstory is that they were in a relationship 8 years ago, and she just ghosted him.
You left without a phone call, a letter, nothing. All this time, yeah, I guess I am still a little mad.
Then she sees Dr. Nick on the news, and wants to see him again. When they reconnect, she has the audacity to do this.
That was 8 years ago. Some people change.
Most people don't.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Oh, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you.
Like, obviously, Nick isn't going to just forgive her for that, but he does feel bad for being slightly mean, so he invites her back to his lab tent. And what's so sad is that this guy still has pictures of her in his temporary lab that he just set up. Like, my man, she ghosted you a decade ago. Move on. So she finally gets back in contact with him, all because he has connections to the story. And after this little reunion, after she sees she kinda broke his heart, what does she do? She steals his top secret VHS, ghosts him again, and broadcasts the tape on the local news.
You gave them the tape?
No, I didn't give them the tape. No, it's in my tent right now. Oh my God.
This is information that the military knows only Dr. Nick should have, so they immediately suspect him and fire him.
Pack your stuff, mister. You're officially off this project as of now.
This woman came back into Dr. Nick's life, not just for her own career, but to ruin his. Look, I get it, it's pretty dumb to have a top secret tape just labeled top secret. Wasn't the smartest move, Dr. Nick. But you can't help but feel for the guy. Like, this is his love interest. This is the romance subplot we are supposed to root for. And she has no remorse for the things she does.
You're leaving? Why? Is it because of me? Because of the story?
Well, what did you think was gonna happen?
She just goes, "Ah, shucks, sorry about that." And the movie drops it forever. She is either stupid or a sociopath.
You never said it was off the record.
I shouldn't have to, Audrey.
Her camera guy is the far superior character. Hank Azaria is Victor Animal Pilati, your classic New York guy, a real class act.
Yeah, Audrey's gonna spend the night with us.
Cool. A threesome.
Do these type of New Yorkers even exist anymore?
This is where the Knicks, get showered and everything.
Hank Azaria, like I said, isn't the only Simpsons cast member here. We also have Harry Shearer, too, the top news anchor of New York, the Harvey Weinstein of the local news.
Why don't we talk about it over dinner tonight? Your place.
Mr. Kamen, you're married.
Yes, and you're very beautiful. Have I ever told you that before?
In an ironic twist of fate, he steals the tape that Audrey stole from Nick. So the lesson here, I guess, is everyone in the media just sucks. And nobody in the media sucks more than film reviewers, like Siskel and Ebert, who gave Independence Day a bad score.
Trotting out an assortment of would-be colorful supporting characters. Blacks, Jews, gays, a drunk.
Emmerich did not forget that, so we get the bumbling Mayor Ebert.
Back off, Gene.
And his lackey Siskel. Or at least this guy that looks like Siskel. Mayor Ebert is actually pretty funny. He's that politician stereotype that only cares about voter approval. He just gets more pissed that the military keeps fucking up. What's even funnier is that Ebert did not like this at all.
What did you think about Mayor Ebert and his sidekick Gene?
I thought that seemed petty.
Yeah, I did too.
It does seem petty, Roger.
Come on, man. You don't have a sense of humor? I'd be honored. Every institution in this film is just incompetent. The only ones who seem to know anything that's going on is, the French.
You call this coffee?
And I call this America.
Yup. In the shadows is the French DGSE, the French version of the CIA. Godzilla is still a product of nuclear testing in the Pacific, but because this is an American film in the late 90s, he wasn't a product of American nuclear testing at all. You see, the real culprit behind all of this was the French, and now they want to cover it up. Classic America, not taking responsibility for a majority of the Wait, they tested how many times in the Pacific? They covered what up? When this movie came out, the last French nuclear test was 2 years before. Traditionally, it's always Americans making Godzilla with their nuclear testing. But if you think about it, France would actually be more likely to make Godzilla than the USA. Is this movie more accurate? I like the French feds.
Got a problem talking?
Well, no, sir, I'm fine.
Keep it moving.
Oh, thank you very much.
Elvis Presley movies.
In the end, the characters not only save the world, but also cover up France's crimes against nature. This is the part of the video for the people that actually, grew up with this movie. I didn't. I'm not one of you. But I can see why many look back on this fondly. A time when every movie had to be backed by endless toys.
Time for the big payback.
Have its own original album full of songs that didn't appear in the film once. But who could forget the best tie-in? An animated series. Yeah, while the movie sucked, apparently the animated series was pretty alright. Yeah, I agree. It has the same characters and everything, but they're just better. Dr. Nick is entirely changed. He's not a wimp anymore. He has more of a badass edge.
If we burn the rest of these plants, we may at least slow down El Generale's weapons program.
I wonder who voices him. Oh. Oh no.
They're sharks, they're scary. No one wants to get eaten. But I've been eaten! Oh, you're right about one thing. You need help.
No, not again. Hank Azaria's character, ironically, isn't played by Hank Azaria. He does sound familiar, though.
It's kind of hard to get your stuff on the air when a bunch of stormtroopers grab your camera and trample your First Amendment rights!
Nothing but that, motherfucker.
This Godzilla isn't the one from the movie. It's one of the babies that didn't get blown the hell up. And it grew up to be good. Fight a rogues gallery of other kaiju. You know, like Godzilla should. This whole series is just an embodiment of late 90s cool, an era we will truly never see again. That Y2K dark edginess, bright grains on a black background, trench coats, a low techno soundtrack. You know, the original Xbox. We get it, it's a bad Godzilla movie, but at the same time, this is so far removed from Godzilla, it's kind of its own thing. In fact, its reputation from the start probably would have benefited if it just wasn't called Godzilla. Say Zilla had just been this separate American monster, a big T-Rex that ran around the city. All those faults people would have with this creature wouldn't really matter. Who cares if it moves around hunched over? Who cares if it climbs on buildings or runs? It'd be its own thing, and those negatives could become its strength. Like Godzilla Minus One's director said, it works as a kaiju movie, flaws and all. Go, 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 go! So in Godzilla Final Wars, Zilla appears as just this entirely separate monster. The movie explains that the events in 1998 actually did happen. It's just that New Yorkers misidentified this creature as the real Godzilla, which of course he isn't. But the part of the film everyone forgets is this brief moment when all the Toho monsters are attacking cities across the globe. Zilla is just one of the many Toho monsters making a ruckus. That made me think, Zilla does not work as Godzilla, but he could work as a Godzilla antagonist. A bizarro Godzilla, because he's kind of the exact opposite of what the King of the Monsters is. Godzilla's like this big, bear-like wrestler, a wall that stands up against anything. Meanwhile, Zilla is like this small iguana dinosaur that sneaks around. Sure, it's weak, but it also lays hundreds of eggs. They can make an army of decently large kaijus. Imagine if Godzilla had to face a Zilla swarm. That'd be awesome. I truly believe Zilla should take its rightful place as Godzilla's Wario. Or at least Godzilla's Doodle Bob. I don't know, Toho bought the IP, so might as well do something with it. Oh. I didn't mean that.
You were like, no, it's the Empire State.
I said the Chrysler Building was in Godzilla.